All right, we are live. I'm here with Scott Perry. Scott and I have known each other for 3 years now, 4 years. I don't know. I lose count. It's been it's we definitely are developing a good history of just knowing each other. We've collaborated on several different things, and I've always enjoyed Scott's perspective on life, business. One thing I will say specifically about Scott that I particularly enjoy about just being connected with him in terms of his wisdom that he shares is like everything's timeless principles. Like Scott's really big on first, like kind of those first order principles that it doesn't really matter what domain you're in, whether you're in solopreneurship or you're doing something in your life, like all the principles can apply. So that's my introduction for Scott Perry. But I do want to have Scott introduce himself, tell everybody, about your background and your story and what you're up to these days.
Well, I really appreciate all of that, Jake. And I would say in internet years, we've probably known each other since kindergarten. So 3 or 4 years is actually,
Yes.
it's more like dog years.
Yeah, totally agree.
Feels like in just a very short period of time, we have done a lot and got to know each other really well. So I appreciate this opportunity to come in and chat always with you. It's always a privilege, and I always come out with my own learnings. So I'm Scott Perry. I am the publisher of the Purpose-Driven Solopreneur Success Stack, and I am the guide inside the Solopreneur Success Circle. I've recently written a book called Close the Gap that helps solopreneurs get clear about their direction, craft a success path, and then collapse time to target. What most people usually find interesting about me is that I leveraged a 7-year association with Seth Godin to transition from a 25-year career as a professional musician and guitar studio owner into what I'm doing now, which is helping other solopreneurs build businesses that fund and fit the life that they would actually like to be living and funding through their business. What's most important to me is that I am a husband to my wife of 36 years. I am the father of two amazing young men, and I am the grandfather and full-time care provider for my grandson, Jasper, the son of my oldest son. And will soon be doing double duty as a grandpa because they are expecting again. So that is the lifestyle that I've built my business around. And yeah, that's uh that's what I think is most relevant about me. I could talk about myself all day long. You know that.
That's right. Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought up the family aspect because I think it really brings home the balance and well, we get so caught up in our businesses, right? And it's like, all the things, the tactics, the strategies, and the content and the work that you do, but then there's also like, what are you doing it for? And bringing home the family. There's like a certain lifestyle that we all desire. And I think this is like, I want to ask you this question because I never asked you this before, and I'm not sure if you read my little origin story that kind of like led me to really like wanting to go more into focusing on solopreneurship and kind of embracing that. But what led you to solopreneurship? Like why solopreneurship? Why does that show up for you as part of your mission?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And yeah, I am aware of your origin story, and I think you and I have come to similar places in our current journey through similar paths. The way that so solopreneur is just a term I use to describe who I am and what I do. You could plug in independent entrepreneur, freelancer, um, creative.
Hmm.
I think it's important to not, when we use these terms as shortcuts to sum up, who we are and what we do, it's easy to fall into a trap around that. So
100%.
I have in my book, Close the Gap, I actually give my origin story. The very first independent entrepreneurial business I ever built was when I was like 7 years old. And I coerced my mom into making lemonade, and I coerced my dad into making a lemonade stand. And I went out at 7 o'clock in the morning because I knew that I could hit the garbage detail as they were coming through the neighborhood. And I literally, in my very first business, sold out my inventory in about a half hour. I hit the garbage truck as it was coming through, and then I hit the mail carriers as he was coming through. Job done. I had no labor costs. I had no infrastructure costs. I had, and I don't remember what I cleared, probably $2.25 or something. But that was my very first enterprise. And when I reflect back in the book, I go through a series of things I've done. And when when I was exiting college and beginning a career as an academic, teaching at some well-known private institutions on the East Coast, I found that was not actually my life's calling. As much as I love teaching, as much as I love working with young people, there were elements of that just presented too big an obstacle to my fulfillment and flourishing. And so I decided to take a chance on myself and leap into this career as a professional musician, which is kind of the ultimate solopreneur endeavor. I mean, I
Mm.
was a solo guitarist. I was also my booking agent. I was also my bookkeeper. I was also my promotions uh, staff. I did everything. And when I began that career, the promise to my wife was, I don't want to be the age that I'm at now and look back and think, oh, I really wonder if I could have done something with that music thing that I love so much.
Mm.
So I just simply said, all I'm asking is that if I make enough tonight to do it again tomorrow, that I can do that until I don't. And it turned out that I did that for about almost 30 years. And it transformed over time. I eventually formed bands and did that sort of thing. I went into promotions for a little while. I had a music store and then a guitar studio and all these other things, but they were all basically up to me. I mean, even with the store and having an employee or two, I was responsible for all the decisions. I was the only person that had anything at stake. And so, for me, solopreneurship, number one, is just a tag that we can use to describe people like you and I.
Yeah.
It's also something to adopt or embrace cautiously, because one of the things that I've been really thinking about a lot lately, and in part because of a conversation I had with Justin Breen recently, is being a solopreneur doesn't mean you have to do it all by yourself, which is why you and I and other people are part of
Mhm.
the community, the Solopreneur Success Circle, where we are leveraging the power of collective momentum and leveraging the power of association and affiliation to hold ourselves accountable and do what we need to do to actually make progress towards the things that we want to do.
Yeah, I love the way that, first off, prefacing the fact that the solopreneurship, sometimes labels have a way of kind of boxing you in, and
Mhm.
you start identifying with this label that may or may not serve you over time. And I kind of see it like with solopreneurship, it's similar to what you're saying, is it's almost like a kind of like a style of business that you want to run, maybe is a way to think about it. It's like, there's a certain level of autonomy and freedom and flexibility that is really appreciated. But to your point too, the word solo, you have to be careful because it's not something you do in isolation. Like
Mhm.
business is never that way. So let's move into the solopreneur success circle, and let's talk about that. Because I think I love the way that you've put this together, but I want you to explain the experience that people can expect, when joining this community with you, and how that kind of collective momentum and collaboration is able to form. And by the way, I'll say one last thing. I've been able to, with a couple people in your community, have been able to build some really awesome relationships.
Mhm.
So highly endorse what Scott's building with the Solopreneur Success community. So yeah, please share more about what that is and your vision around it, your intent and everything that you're doing there.
Well, sure. I appreciate that. I have been the leader or guide in an online community since of my own creation since 2018. I launched something called the Difference Maker community when I was first gaining some traction and success as a coach, a corner man, a guide for people that were building businesses on their own.
Mhm.
And it's taken a lot of, it's looked at differently, and it's attract different people over time. And it's been a big learning for me to clarify who I actually, who it's for, what it's for, and the promise that I can make to people that join. It's also been a practice in making sure I'm clear about who I don't serve and what I
Mm.
don't do and promises that I can't make. And so the Solopreneur Success Circle is the hub of my business and in what I call my Be a Blessing marketing web. So, like a lot of solopreneurs that have online businesses, you can find me in a lot of places. You can find me on my site, of course. You can find me at my Substack publication, of course. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube and podcast platforms and on and on. What I'm trying to do with the Substack is I don't really care where you collide with me and my work. What I'm trying to do through all of my social media outposts, my YouTube channel, and my podcast is increase awareness about who I am and what I do and who it's for. And so,
Yes.
wherever you collide with me, I want to earn your awareness. I want to earn some of your attention, so that when you are ready, when you trust me enough to give me permission to have a more direct conversation with you, I want you to come to my Substack and subscribe for the weekly wisdom that I'm delivering there.
Mm.
Once, so that's all marketing stuff.
Yep.
Once I have you as a free subscriber, I want to move you into some sort of, what I think of as my sales cycle, which is I want to earn your interest. I want to earn your enrollment in the journey I can help you with. And I want you to invest in your success by hiring me in some capacity to catalyze your experience. The Solopreneur Success Circle is the community of paid Substack subscribers. So for $9 a month or $90 a year, the folks like you and the rest of the members get a ton of access, proximity, and assistance from me. 2 weekly calls a month, every Monday and every Friday, a weekly over-the-shoulder coaching call, monthly calls where we do deep dive into things that are pertinent to any solopreneur that wants to succeed. And by delivering value there and helping people see what they don't see and find what's missing and fix what's broken, they become more prepared for that deeper level of access and connection in some sort of coaching relationship. And so the solopreneur success, and obviously lots of folks become members of that community just for the affiliation and the accountability and the fellowship and the learning. Um, but what I'm finding is that it is a great mechanism for turning the right prospects into good fit leads
Mm.
and then training those leads up into becoming perfect clients. And by perfect clients, I mean the kind of clients that through their work with me will actually accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, because what then happens is they become evangelicals for the community
Mhm.
and for the transformation that I can help facilitate. And the long game for me is I at some point will get rid of all of my activities on social media, and who knows about I think YouTube and podcasting will still have plenty of utility, in part because I just love creating videos and podcasting. But um, the ultimate end game is how do I provide as much help for a very modest investment to people that self-identify as the kind of solopreneur that wants to make a difference in the world? And by making a difference in the world, I mean help make the difference only they can make in the way that they can make it with people who share their values and need their talents to enhance their lives, so that over time, the legacy that I'm hoping to leave behind is the same as when I was a guitar teacher. I created 1,000 guitar players in this town that I live in. People will remember me for that for at least the time I have left and probably beyond that time. What I want to be remembered for through this endeavor is having helped create the kind of people that can continue to that collective momentum and create and a ripple of influence instead of return on investment, right? A ripple of impact that
Mhm.
they will be able to make the change that they can make with other people, who will then make the change that they can make with other people. And the long game is to ultimately make the world a better place, a place where
Yep.
anyone can succeed in the game of life on their terms without compromise.
Mm. So I want to contrast that with there's your difference makers manifesto. I'm actually looking at it over here on my screen, and there's kind of an opening line. Um, and I want to preface before I get into this is doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, right? It's the work you're meant to do, which I wholeheartedly agree with. But I want to contrast that with this opening line, and that is solopreneurs are drowning in noise,
Mhm.
which the noise is kind of the thing that's getting in the way. It seems to be the thing that's getting in the way of doing the work you're meant to do, right? So tell me a little bit more about what you're seeing there. Like, what is the noise, and how can that solopreneur remove that constraint from their life? Like, what can they do to get more focused? What are you seeing? What kind of insight do you have there?
Sure. It's a great question. What I'm seeing is what I experienced for far too long, which
Mm,
is we we are all pre-programmed and conditioned, and you know this very well. We are all pre-programmed and conditioned to chase after more. We
mhm,
are, you enter solopreneurship because you are pursuing freedom, time freedom, relationship freedom, revenue freedom, and you know that there's this thing that you have that can have an impact on people, and if you can just package it and put it in front of the right people, the dream is that you'll make enough of a living to do that work the next day, and over time it will be optimized and perhaps scaled. um, and what happens is most of the folks that I work with, like me, have been in business for a little while. They've had enough success to know that what they are doing is viable, but they haven't really mastered the sustainability piece. So what do we do?
mhm,
Well, because there's so much noise created by digital marketers and online gurus, and I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. I certainly behave like a digital marketer sometimes, and I've been accused
mhm,
of being a guru. But what I am talking about is the kind of things that you see where someone is saying, "Here's how I succeeded, and because I succeeded, because this worked for me, I think it will work for you. Because this worked for me in the past, I am selling it to you because I assert that it will work for you."
mm,
The problem is that everybody that purchases that offer from you is not you, and it's no longer the past. So by the time you buy the digital marketer's LinkedIn messaging strategy or YouTube channel strategy, Instagram strategy, email, whatever it is, by the time you've purchased it, it has already started to reach a tipping point where now it's on the downslide in terms of diminishing returns.
mm,
There was a window of time when people, and I was one of them, had a lot of success with messaging strategies on LinkedIn. And then everybody saw it, everybody started doing it,
yep,
and most people did it really poorly. And now LinkedIn is kind of almost a cesspool of just you wake up every morning and open up your inbox and it's just loaded with spam. People
yep,
trying to sell you something, people wanting to optimize your YouTube channel for you, people wanting you to get an MBA. I mean, so the big issue with this idea of distraction and noise is, and this is the heart of the initial work I do with any solopreneur that comes to me that has some track record of success and has probably tried way more than is necessary to try to optimize that with little return on investment. By adding these things to your success system, you are automatically diminishing the effectiveness and efficiency of your system. When I started my business, I had a Google Doc and a PayPal link and a bunch of people that were asking me for coaching. So I put my offer on a Google Doc, put in a PayPal link, reached out to people that were already asking for my help and said, "You've been asking me to be a coach. I'm going to be a coach if 10 of you will buy this offer." And 11 people bought their offer, and my fate was sealed. And that's how I began my business. Instead of just optimizing that very simple system of, here's an offer, you're an audience that's interested, and here's my methodology for putting it in front of you. What did I do? I built a site. I created a logo. I built a lead magnet, created an email sequence. I bought into all the socials, started a YouTube channel, started a podcast, started a blog. All of those things were added to a system that had already proven it could work. And what happened? I turned a very simple success system that could have been optimized with a lot less stress, headache, time, attention, money, and effort. And I created this bloated system that only inhibited my ability to make a better living, but also created nothing but homework for me to do every day.
Mm.
And I turned what was initially an enterprise where I was able to invest just 10 hours a week into something that I was investing almost 100 hours a week. And it wasn't until I didn't recognize that for years. And most other solopreneurs don't either. And so the first step is, what do you want? Where are you and what do you have? And what are the 3 things that are necessary to get you there? And for any solopreneur that wants to reach some sort of annual revenue goal or, fill a program or whatever it is, if you have had any success in that, you have started with some assets and resources and some sort of strategy for achieving that. What do you need to get from where you are to where you want to be? You need an irresistible offer, an eager audience, and the simplest system that you can fashion to put that offer in front of that audience.
Mm.
And there's nothing in that equation that says you need to have a LinkedIn strategy, a YouTube strategy, a podcast, a book, a blog, or anything else. So the very first thing that we do to eliminate the distraction and to disprove the delusion that the only way to succeed is to act like everybody else on the internet is, let's look at what's worked in the past. The rear view mirror. Let's look at how we got where we are. And let's take away everything that we don't have to do to get to where we want to be. And usually we're left with 1 or 2, 3 things that have to go right enough. And we can optimize based on that simple system. And we will increase velocity and ease over time. And so what I was able to do was, after I started a business that had every indication that it was going to be successful, and then clogged it up with all these things that I was doing that I didn't have to do, when we decided to become full-time grandparent care providers for my grandson, I took a look at my system and I realized that it was really bloated and full of cruft. And I cut all the cruft and I cut all the fat and I focused on the 3 things that had to go right enough, and I got my traction back. But more than anything, I finally captured the freedom in terms of time and revenue and effort that I was chasing all along, but I was doing it back to 10 hours a week instead of 100 hours a week. And, over the last 4 years or so, it took a year to re-optimize the system, but for the past 3 years plus, 3.5 years or so, the business has operated pretty consistently and steadily in terms of meeting all of my financial responsibilities with just 10 hours a week. And I get to do whatever I want with the rest of that time.
I want to emphasize there's a couple principles that showed up for me personally that you and I've, we've come from this place of kind of like the whole TGA principles that we had learned. One of them is the system reliability piece. And I don't know, maybe I can find an article that you've written. I'm sure you've published something on it that talks about, like, the more things that need to go right, the lower your probability of getting the outcome that you want. So that's the noise piece. It's like there's all this noise in your system that's just all it's doing is just keeping you from actually getting the outcome that you intend this system to deliver for you. And there's only like a couple things that actually, it's like the 80-20 rule. There's only a couple
Mhm.
things that's actually moving the needle. And then the second thing that came up for me was micro steps.
Mhm.
And I can speak about this personally. It's like when I can map back to every failure I've had, it was always because I took too big of a step or too big of a leap without actually gathering enough data. Because sometimes, like, you go into these endeavors or businesses, or maybe it's coaching. It's like, I don't even know if this is even something I want to do. So
Mhm.
why would I go and build this huge giant brand on something that I haven't even validated as even something I even want for my life? And that's what ends up exhausting a lot of resources. So I just wanted to point those two things out, because as you're talking, you explained it beautifully, but kind of pulling in some of these principles that we've learned, and has very much like helps protect a lot of your downside. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and I want to get your opinion on this, because this is something I've been seeing, and I think it speaks a lot to what you just explained in terms of all the noise and all these things that are out there that's trying to kind of pull at your attention and get you to do things that may or may not serve you. And it's the there's like the Dunning-Kruger effect. You're familiar with that, right? Like the mountain that
Mhm.
rises to the top of, your confidence goes really high in the beginning, and you're very, very confident. And then you start having that contact with reality, and you start engaging the field. And then you realize that what you thought it wasn't actually what it was. And then you start, you might get your teeth kicked in a little bit. You might get a couple scrapes, and then you come down to the valley of despair. And when people are getting started in their businesses, I see this show up so much. It's like they go into it, they're very confident, they start overbuilding or building things,
Mhm.
addressing the noise. And then the reality of it's inevitable. The reality eventually hits you that a lot of those decisions that you made and the noise that you're chasing is actually not serving you, because you're not going anywhere. You're just stuck, you're exhausting, you're burning out. And then you get to a point where you're in that valley of despair, where you're questioning yourself, like, is this even something I should be pursuing? You feel irresponsible. You feel of like a failure, and there's all this negativity. And it's like, if you can just break through that and just take those lessons and readjust, then you start going into that slope of enlightenment. And that's when really the benefits start kicking in. So, kind of laying the field for you there with the Dunning-Kruger effect, and kind of how you've seen what you just explained in terms of the noise and the things that people are chasing. Um, Knowing that that's kind of like a common journey that people take, where, like, for the people who are like on that rise, like that initial rise, what would be your message to them? Or like, have you been able to kind of break through that person? Because I feel like it's really hard to break through to that person, because their confidence is so high, and there's this like overcompensation of building, like, I got to get all this stuff perfect before I get it out, because I'm not even really confident in myself yet. What have been some things that how have you communicated with that person to really help kind of break through and get them back on track, so they are able to build without all of this unnecessary noise and bloat and things that just do nothing but weigh you down?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I appreciate the reflection on the insights that you shared. I'm going to actually start by reflecting back the things that you said. So, the close the gap process for you're achieving business priorities is built precisely on the three things that you cited. We begin with reasoning from first principles.
Mhm.
What are the things that have to be true for me to get from where I am to where I want to be, from where I really am with the resources I already have to where I actually want to be? And there can be a lot of distraction and delusion about that to begin with. So we have to clarify that first. When we are moving into the next step, which is the system reliability piece, we are crafting that path with the essential components,
Mm.
the essential things that have to be in place to get from where we are to where we want to be. And then we are using micro stepping to collapse time to target, to take low risk, high result actions, a daily discipline of intentional action to collect the data we need to analyze so that we can strategically implement a better approach and iterate and improve our approach and then execute that so that over time we're creating this flywheel, success flywheel, where we are increasing ease and velocity to target by just paying attention to the first principles, the system reliability, and maintaining a practice of microstepping. So there is a piece of that ties into your question around, dealing with someone that is in either the euphoria of early success or just the euphoria of start. Like most entrepreneurial minded people get really jazzed by anything that's new. Like just
Mhm.
starting the new project feels like you actually have already accomplished something and you have all that energy and passion fueling you. At some point you realize that the return on investment for all of your time, attention, money, and effort is not being realized in any kind of actual monetary or fulfillment or flourishing gain. And the valley of despair comes in when you look back up and there's all these people that appear to be succeeding beyond your expectations. They also seem to be not nearly as competent at doing what they do as you are, which only amplifies that despair. And so
Right.
what do you do? Oh, they must know something because they're succeeding and I'm not. So that's when you buy the digital marketer programs or
Mhm.
the guru programs. And that just spins you out more. It just keeps you stuck and spinning your wheels. So here's the key insight that I think applies to your question. And this is what I do with clients that are either at the top of, what we affectionately call in the Dunning and Kruger effect, the top of Mount Stupid or the Valley of Despair, is we have to remember that decisions are not outcomes. It makes sense when you make a good decision and get a good outcome. And it makes sense when you make a bad decision and you get a bad outcome. However, decisions are not outcomes because time and randomness have a way of presenting themselves, and you can make a really good decision and get a really bad outcome. And you can make a
Mhm.
really bad decision and get a really good outcome. And that only amplifies your delusion. If you make a good decision and get a bad outcome, you start second guessing your ability to do things the way that you're doing them. And
Yep.
you start changing and making the bad decision to do it the way someone else is doing it. Not only are you no longer playing your game and playing a game that you can't win because it's not your game, you're probably playing a game that you actually don't want to play. So I have, when I'm working with clients, we talk about the decision matrix and the Dunning and Kruger effect, and kind of just let's figure out what's really going on here. If you have a proven viable offer and you have an audience that is interested or even eager to get your help, and you just haven't really clarified and optimized the plan for putting that offer in front of that audience, that's a very solvable problem.
Mhm.
That doesn't require you to do anything new, different, or anything else. It actually just requires that you actually stop doing all the things that you shouldn't be doing and lean into the, in some ways harder work of facing, having that conversation in the mirror with what what your level of distraction, dullness, and delusion. So I have a process that I've just actually recently rebranded called the decision triangle.
Mm.
And it's based on, you referenced this in the introduction. I get a lot of inspiration and insight from ancient wisdom and spiritual traditions
Mhm.
and philosophy. And this comes directly from my mentor, Marcus Aurelius, who I've been in conversation with since I was in the 7th grade. And it comes from what's called the 3 Stoic disciplines, the discipline of perception, action, and will. The first step in the decision-making triangle is you have to frame your situation without the distraction and delusion.
Mm.
You have to frame what's going on without any adjectives and adverbs, without any value judgments, without any unnecessary context. Like if, and not, I'm sure you see this when people come to you with website design. I need to have a website that looks just like this, and I need to have 27, frames, and I need to have the lead magnet in the upper right corner, and I need my logo to be, blah 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 blah
Oh
blah
yeah.
blah.
Oh yeah.
So, like that's all assumption, because you and I both know plenty of businesses that do very, very well with no website, or very, very simple websites that don't have any of those things.
Yep.
So the first step is, what's the problem that we're actually trying to solve? No adjectives, no adverbs, no value judgments. And then the second step is, now that we know what we're trying to solve for, what we're trying to accomplish, the problem that we actually have, what are all of the possible options going forward? Do we need to not have a website? Do we need to think about testing a simpler website first? Do we need to test, branding, messaging, colors, whatever? Like, there's all these things that you can do. Once you are looking at all of the actual possibilities, what's the smallest step that gives you the biggest gain? What's the smallest thing that you can do that will provide an outsized gain? There's a number of other frames that you can put through, but the basic idea is literally list out all your options, cross out any that don't allow you to play your game. If they're out of alignment with your skill set or your values or your guiding principles, you should not be doing them, because you don't have to, because there's going to be other options. Once you've whittled down your list through the filter of, this is the kind of person I am and what I do and what I don't do, and this is the kind of person I am and this is what I do and what I don't do, now you look at your list and you make your best guess for which of these things, if I did it right now, would give me, provide me with data, help me make progress, and allow me to reflect on the next kink in the hose that I can address to continue to make progress. And then the final piece of the decision-making triangle is making sure that you're paying attention to what matters. Like, if it's not helping you move toward the vision, the ideal lifestyle that you're trying to have your business fund and fit around, then you're knocking yourself out of alignment with who you actually are and what you're actually good at and where you actually belong. And all you're going to do is end up building you might succeed in achieving a revenue goal, but if you achieve that revenue goal and you don't like the person that you've become, and you don't like the people that you're doing business with, and you don't enjoy the day-to-day life that you're living because of this business, you have not won. You have actually failed. And so I think a lot of it just, again, comes down to, all these things that are coming from first principles. Like, Dunning-Kruger is an actual thing.
It is.
And
Yeah.
avoiding it is also an actual thing, but it does work. And this is, again, speaking back to what we said at the beginning, this is why you should not be doing any of this alone, because you cannot read the prescription from inside the bottle.
Mhm.
Everybody that comes to me that tells me that they need my help implementing some digital marketer, online guru, hack, trick, blueprint, roadmap, whatever, the first thing is why. Why do you have to do that? Is that the only
Mhm.
thing to do? Because it's like they've bought the dogmatic medicine that someone has prescribed, and it's not going to help them make the adaptive change that they have to make to become the kind of person that actually succeeds in business on their terms, doing what they want with people they love, and making the difference only they can make.
I want to ask you about removing the most immediate constraint, like within your decision making piece. How does that show up when you're deciding what's the best option? What's going to be the biggest? What's the next step that's going to give me the biggest outcome? Where does the constraint removal fall in place within this process?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's the most challenging piece, because the only way to identify the most immediate constraint is to engage in a process probably with someone else that is trained in doing this, that helps you see what you don't see,
Mhm.
because we are just prone, because of confirmation bias, to believe what we believe simply because we believe it, and we just keep doing what we're doing simply because we've done it in the past and it makes sense to do it again today, even though it has no track record of getting us closer to what we actually want. But the simple answer for me, that I often use with clients and people in the community, is when they, again, first you have to actually have clarity of direction. Where
Mhm.
are you actually trying to, what are you actually trying to accomplish? And how does that fund and fit the life that you want to be living? And where are you actually, and what are the resources and assets you already possess that can help you get there? And if you have those two things, then and we have identified the two or three things that need to go right, then the next most immediate constraint is uh, is w- it might be better to illustrate this with an example. If I know that I want to make, just for the sake of argument, I'm not big on revenue goals, but just say that, you're chasing the usual,
10K a
$10,000 a
month.
month, right? And so, through our work together, I've convinced you, like, let's look at what you actually have to make. Like, I take people through a recapture reallocate where we actually determine where all the money is currently going. Like, here are the actual living expenses, mortgage or rent, gas, food, etc., the things that are essential. Here's the discretionary income and where that's going. And if there's things that we can trim there, then we'll arrive at a number that is true in terms of, this is what I have to take care of to be a
Mhm.
financially responsible person. It's never the number that they say they want to make.
Yeah.
If we can optimize for making sure that we hit that annual revenue goal as soon as possible, then what we're talking about is, in terms of the system reliability, is a is finding the that the place in the system that is creating is the least efficient and the least effective. And that's going to be the most immediate constraint. So sometimes people are trying to optimize their this is the example I love to use because it's pertinent to so many people that are coaches, consultants, creatives, freelancers. If if your if your revenue generating system uh, begins with, clients paying you for your product or service, and that purchase is made through some sort of discovery call or some sort of sales process, that's the end of your system, right? So let's just
Mhm.
say, for the sake of argument, that um, I the clients that I close are come from a discovery or a sales call. The people that come to me, that book a discovery or sales call, come to me because we've had conversations through email, through LinkedIn Messenger, Facebook Messenger, what have you. And those conversations come through content generation. That's just a kind of a typical uh,
Mhm.
funnel or system that many freelancers, many solopreneurs use. So the system is, this amount of content generates this amount of conversations, generates this number of calls, generates this number of clients.
Yep.
If you can actually account for how much content creates how many conversations and how many calls and how many closed um, clients, your system is all dialed in. If it's working, if it's actually got traction, now all we have to do is identify the black holes or the blind spots in that system. And so, in terms of your question around the kink in the hose, we've got this system, it's working. And just to keep it to round numbers, if we have, for every 100 pieces of content, we start 10 conversations, and those 10 conversations usually lead to one call. And if I get 10 calls, I know I can get one client. That's a pretty
Mm.
typical case study. Okay, cool. We know what the system looks like. We know what the efficiencies are. 10% of people that engage with content actually comment and start a conversation. 10% of those people actually book a call. And if 10 of those people book a call, 10% of them will become clients. Where's the kink in the hose? Well, if you think the kink in the hose is, okay, if I just double my content, I'll double my conversations and double my calls and double my clients. You just signed up for a ton of work. It takes a lot of time, money, attention, and effort to create content and book more calls, and still only have 10% move into a discovery call, and then have 10% of those move into the real kink in the hose is you're not very good at discovery calls. If 10 people are coming in to a discovery call and you're only closing one, you need to at least double that.
Yeah.
That's the kink in the hose. And most people will not see that because we're programmed for more. They'll just say, oh, I'll just double my content. That will help double it. Like if I double the input, I'll double the output. Well, yes, probably. But if you actually optimize the end of the process, raise the floor on the least efficient, effective piece, then you can do the same amount of work and get double the revenue on the back end. So that's
Yeah.
that's just one kind of real world example for identifying the kink in the hose or the next most immediate constraint. But there is a lot that goes into that, and ultimately what I end up saying to people is, well, is there a step before that step that you're wanting to take? Like, oh, I want 100 clients, and I'm told that a book will get me there.
Hmm.
Really? Okay. Why? Well, so-and-so wrote a book. Okay. They have a program. Do you like to write? Oh no, I hate writing.
Right.
Is writing the only way to get the word out about what you do?
Yeah.
And that's literally the way people usually think. It's like, oh, well, it must be, I've tried podcasting, I've tried blogging, I've tried YouTube, I've tried Facebook, but now it looks like books are working, so I'll become an author. Makes no sense.
It seems like even I've noticed on social media, the kind of promoting tactics tends to get the most signal too and the most attention. People chase tactics, and they don't fully understand, why or where it shows up as part of the overarching strategy. And then you end up over time, you do that, you end up with this bloated system, going back to the noise that you end up creating for yourself. We're getting kind of near the end here. I do want to ask you one more question, is about just time horizons. And I know 90 days is something that shows up in your value propositions on kind of a time horizon that you help people. What are your thoughts on time horizons? How far out do you tend to plan? What does that look like in terms of how you help people kind of peek around the corner? Use a little Dr. Jeff's speech here on time horizon and planning.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it's again, there's a lot of distraction around this because people talk about 10-year plans, 5-year plans, 3-year plans, 1-year plans,
Yeah.
quarterly plans, so
Mhm.
forth. The problem with setting something way out and clinging to it as that's the destination, that's the goal, is that you can easily find yourself putting blinders on and grit and grinding your way to something only to realize that it's not what you thought it was going to be. Like if you decide that you want to be a lawyer and you're going to sign up for that journey in terms of investment of time and attention and money, and only to find, and I've worked with plenty of doctors and lawyers and other
Mm.
people that have spent a lot of money on their education, that only to find I don't really like doing what I'm doing, but I've got so much sunk cost invested, I can't do it. Like I
Mhm.
can't change. So there is, half the answer is you don't want to set something that's too far out because you have to take into consideration time and randomness and maintain a reserve clause to have the right to change your mind if you meet unforeseen opportunities or obstacles that require you to reconsider and course correct.
Hmm.
At the same time, just going like living day to day and without any kind of plan is equally dangerous, because it's really easy to just get dragged around by all the distraction and delusion
Hmm.
that's so prevalent on the internet.
Yep.
So when it comes to time horizon, I I do advocate in the close the gap process and in the book, if you have truly set your point on the horizon in terms of the lifestyle that you're trying to have your business fund and fit around, and you have done a careful audit of all of your assets and resources, and have clarified your uh, success path so that you're only working on the 2 or 3 things that need to go right,
Hmm.
um, then the the best way that I have seen so far to collapse time to target is, okay, if this is where I ultimately want to end up and this is where I am, what if I accomplished it over the next 90 days would actually get move me the furthest and the fastest toward that goal? Because that's a very, that's a reasonable commitment, and it gives you, each of these kind of 90-day objectives have to be measurable. Like, you have to
Hmm.
actually know if you achieve them or not, which means you have to collect the data, which
Yep.
will allow you to analyze that data and then iterate and improve your system so that you can execute it in the next 90 days to get to continue the acceleration, the traction, whatever you've accomplished. And even with a 90-day goal, you have to have the reserve clause in your hip pocket.
Yep.
Um,
Hmm.
you have the right to change your mind if if unforeseen circumstances, obstacles, or opportunities, or sometimes obstacles are just opportunities in disguise. You may have to course correct. You may have
Yep.
to reevaluate. Just a quick example: when the pandemic was on, my wife and I kind of decided, okay, well, I can, even though I had moved my business entirely online and it was still doing very well, I decided, I could actually close down the guitar studio, and I could just, do well enough with my online coaching work that we could actually fulfill our dream of being world travelers. So we sold our house, because you could make a lot of money selling a house in this area during the pandemic.
Hmm.
um, we moved across the street in a rental that was month to month, and we just decided we were going to ride out the pandemic. And when it was all done, we were going to sell all our stuff and become vagabonds for a full year. We're just going to travel the world, something we've been dreaming about for a long time. And then the summer that the world opened up, our kids announced that they're pregnant. And we
Hmm.
immediately were like, well, we don't want to go anywhere. If our grandson is going to be in the picture, why don't we just stick around and we'll become, but if we had put the blinders on and just kept going, we would have missed all the richness and actual fulfillment that we get from the life that we're living now, which is built entirely around being daycare. So
Yeah.
you have to have that level of self-awareness and flexibility. I call it anti-fragility. You have to be
Hmm.
willing to um, make sure that you don't keep your obligations and your commitments as few and flexible as possible, because uh, situations and circumstances will require you to change your mind if you are going to actually live the the fulfilling, flourishing life that you want to be living.
Totally. I want to pull up Matt Yesbeck says, I'm not a solopreneur, but I did find this conversation very helpful and glad I tuned in. Kind of goes back to the point of timeless principles. They can be applied whether you're a solopreneur, doesn't matter really the domain you're in. This is all applicable. So Scott, this has been great. You just really you share so much wisdom. I always enjoy our conversations together. We're getting out to the end. I do want to talk about, you have a free book here. We're going to pull this up here called Close the Gap.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit. There's a free digital copy that you can just, put in your email and your name, and it sends you a copy. So tell us a little bit about this book and what people can expect.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. It's actually just a very condensed, distilled version of everything that we've talked about. I do operate entirely from philosophy and principles because from that foundation, we can create strategies and apply tactics and tools that are unique to you and your situation. So,
Mhm.
this is a book that is designed to help any seasoned solopreneur, someone that has a business that is already working, but they would like for it to work better, apply a very straightforward set of principles and a very straightforward process to clarifying their direction, crafting their success path, and collapsing time to target with greater velocity and ease over time. It's entirely available. The entire book is available for free. It's a resource that all of my clients cite over and over again as being incredibly helpful. But I don't know how many readers we have at this point, but it's a book that everyone that is collided with it, that is serious about succeeding as a solopreneur, has found incredibly helpful, and it's a very short read.
Very cool. Well, I just, and I'll go ahead, pop this on the screen again. Just creativeonpurpose.com is your website. It looks like you made some updates. I was just on it. You've got some kind of a new flow going on, but for anybody that wants to get connected with you, tell us again the best place to kind of start that conversation and take that journey with you on what they do in their business and their life and how they can get acquainted.
Yeah, well, if you go to the website, there is a no opt-in required flow chart of the entire Close the Gap process. There's also the free digital download that you can opt in for, and there's links that take you to my Substack. So creativeonpurpose.com is the easiest place to go to. The best place is obviously my Substack, because if you sign up for the newsletter, you're getting uh, insights every week that will inspire you to take intentional action and get closer to the things that you're trying to accomplish with your business.
Mm, perfect. Well, Scott, this has been great. Really appreciate your time. It's always good connecting, and thank you for coming on to the live stream today and sharing your wisdom and insight and all the things you do with every. We actually this is the most well attended live stream I've conducted, and we had I think about 20 people stick around
Oh,
for
nice.
almost the entire time. So thought that was really cool for everybody watching. Really appreciate your commitment to be here as well. So on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap up. And thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.